The cellmate of notorious serial killer Roger Kibby is accused of killing him at Mule Creek State. A correctional officer doing an inmate count found Kibby unresponsive on the floor Sunday morning. He's notoriously known as the I-5 Strangler. Kibby was convicted of raping and murdering 7 people in crimes dating back to 1977. His cellmate Jason Budrow is now being housed in a segregation unit pending the investigation. He was serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole for first-degree murder in Riverside County. Katie Johnston for CBS 13 News.
Vito Bertacchini, former lead homicide detective with the San Joaquin County Sheriff's Office, he remembers the last conversation he had with Kibby in 2019.
He was scared to be on main line. He was worried that somebody would try to make a name for themselves by attacking him.
He's got a little bit of delay in his system, so just bear with us. Jason, how are you? Good. How you doing today?
Good. Can you hear me?
I can't. Ron, can you hear him pretty good?
Yeah, we're all good sound-wise here.
So, Jason, you're on live with my YouTube. Just talk about a little bit of your life. Like, what was it like growing up as Jason Boudreau, and what kind of, like, you ended up in prison? Like, what you've been in? I know you were in and out of prison. Talk about your life growing up, Jason. Like, you were born where, and what's your life been like? What is your family like, and what's your life like?
Okay. Well, I grew up in the 90s as an adolescent. I was born in 1980. Growing up, I was pretty much like the odd kid. I didn't really have a whole lot of friends. If I did have a friend, it was another odd kid. For the most part, it sucked. I was real introverted, not really into sports too much, none of that. I moved around a lot. I never really lived in one place for more than a year until going to prison. When I came to prison in 2011, I went to Mill Creek, and I got there in 2012, and I was there in the same spot for like 6.5 years. That was the first time I ever really had any stability, and I was in my 30s at that point. Mostly, though, just moved around a lot, and no stability, no real friends, emotional abuse, physical abuse in the house, basic shit.
So when you say you had stability, you had stability when you went to prison?
Yeah, correct.
So explain that to people who live, in the world here today. Like, what do you mean by stability? Because I was talking about that. Like, some people are okay being in prison. What's it like being in prison, and what kind of stability do you have?
Well, a lot of that depends on the individual, where they fit in the social scheme of things. But for me, what I mean by stability is I had one physical location that didn't change, and a network of people that really didn't change. And I was able to begin to develop more healthy type of social interactions with people where I could get to know them, and they could get to know me on a more of a humanistic kind of level.
So if you were on the outside, if you weren't in prison, Jason, would you possibly be homeless, or where would you be?
No, I've always been able to have a job. I've always been able to make it in the world. That's not my issue. It's just when it came to connecting with people in society, things were so fluid and things changed so much that I never really bonded or connected with people, because everything is just so fluid and changing all the time. But in prison, you're kind of forced, because you don't really move around a lot, to get to know the people you're around. And but when it comes to living in society, I can't say that society never gave me a chance. They always did. And I always had good jobs. I always was able to make friends on a superficial level, but I just never really had, I don't know, I just never really had that positive outcome in society like I've had since I've been incarcerated this time.
I've never said this to you before, Jason, but you're very intelligent. You're very smart. You're very driven. I would think out on the outside right now, you would be fucking killing it with a job, running a company, doing something. Do you ever think about that? Like I could be on the outside fucking killing it right now, or do you not think about that?
I certainly would. Even a lot of correctional officers, after they've gotten to know me for a while, because I've always had like lead man type of positions where I would be a lead porter, I'd be running a housing unit, managing the distribution of supplies, etc. And they all, they're baffled. They're like, dude, if you could get out, you would totally make it. And I would totally make it without being any kind of criminal or any kind of threat to society. I would totally be a contributing member of society. Now, something mystical happened to me. Something on a spiritual level happened to me in 2014, and I've never been the same since. I got this. I could go through and bore the audience with that sad song of abuse and hardship that many people have. I don't choose to focus on that. I would definitely be killing it, man. I would be doing good. I'd have a chick. I'd have a job. I'd have friends. I would be able to help people in positive ways. I totally wouldn't be a loser. No way.
So, Jason, you and I have never talked about this. Did you have, and if you don't want to talk about your family, I'm cool with that, but did you grow up in a dysfunctional home?
Yeah, I did. Now, like the thing with that, right? I give my mom a lot of credit. She had to struggle with her own issues of abuse growing up, and then being a battered woman. Her and I never really had a mother-son relationship like people would think most typical mother and sons do. And my family had a lot of drug abuse and a lot of all that stuff. And I don't choose to focus on that as an excuse. My fault is my fault. I still at the end of the day made the bad choices that I've made. I've made a lot of bad choices in life. And it sucks. And I wish I could hit the reset button. I really wish I could. But I don't, I don't fault my parents in any way. They've done an exceptional job, the best that they could. And I don't want to be one of those narratives that want to try to blame the family, try to blame the abuse, try to blame the narrative, all that bullshit. That's not me.
No, that's super cool. And I grew up in a dysfunctional home as well. So you ended up getting involved in drugs, like selling drugs, right? Like that. You eventually became involved in the drug trade. So I know you don't want to talk much about this, but what can you tell us? Were you involved in robberies as well? Were you involved in violent crimes, or were you just selling drugs?
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
Well, the best way I can, for me personally, no, mostly just interpersonal, anything that has to do with interpersonal interactions, transactions, management, things like that. I'm in a way a people person. I'm responsible. I am very task oriented, and I have a lot of follow through. I could be counted on to not dip into a supply and to make sure I make the phone calls I got to make and do the transactions I got to do and count the money that is there and do everything that's got to be done professionally and responsibly. That's my unique characteristic. Armed robbers and hitmen, they're a dime a dozen. In the game, they're like the lowest of the totem pole because anybody could pull a gun, anybody could pull a trigger, anybody could kill somebody. That shit's easy. What is difficult is being able to have a social network and go outside the box and meet people that know people on a mid-level distribution type of aspect. You want to. I was always really good at meeting upper middle class white American type of people, be they gay or LGBTQ, and I'm a real personable people kind of person. So when it comes to somebody who wants to distribute meth or ecstasy or coke, what have you, I know 10 to 15 to 20 people who want to buy on a frequent basis 5 or 6 pounds or a couple keys routinely, and that is what's valuable to a connection is somebody that has that kind of skill set, not so much, kicking in doors. Those kind of people are worthless.
So in the world that we live outside of prison, you're a marketer, you're in sales, you're a corporate person. The product you sell is drugs, but you're in the corporate world, and you got pretty big, and then we
This
won't.
call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
I know we won't get into this, but something happened. You ended up killing someone, and you killed a person, and they were in your vehicle, in the trunk of your car, and you drove to the police department. Talk about that day, Jason. So you have a victim with you. Where do you go, and what do you say to them?
Well, look, this is a difficult thing, right? And I don't really like to talk about that situation, not because I'm some kind of coward that can't take accountability for their actions. I certainly can't. I just want to be considerate of the victim's family and all that. I don't really want to talk about that kind of stuff based on that. Like,
right. We got you.
I never really got big. I never got big in the game. Like, to think I got big in the dope game is a misunderstanding. I was just average. I was never big. And, you know, I knew people that agencies wanted to get intelligence on, and I wasn't willing to flip and be their informant. And I didn't know I was on drugs, coming off of drugs. Really, I wasn't on drugs. I was in the grips of methamphetamine withdrawal. I had some kind of psychosis as a result of that, plus the stress of my situation at the time. And something bad happened, and I carry a lot of guilt and shame for it. I'm definitely sorry. But this is not the appropriate type of forum or venue.
No, you're good. You're good. We get it, but just talk about, so bad thing, something bad happened, Jason, but you drove to a police department with a victim. Where were you at? What city were you in?
I mean, you know, people can find all that out looking it up. I'm not, you know, my whole understanding about talking is to talk about smoking the serial killer, not talk about, you know, 2010. You know, that's what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about killing that fucking shit, rapist, motherfucking murderer, not, you know, what happened and all that and the situation surrounding that.
Okay, so you ended up turning yourself in. You went to prison, and where did you first land, and what prison did you end up in?
Well, I went through the basic funnel that everybody goes through. I went to county jail. From county jail, I went to reception center. From reception center, I landed in Mill Creek, and I stayed at Mill Creek for a long time. I was there for approximately 9 years. I was there on the level 4 yard. In prison, there's levels. You got level 4, level 3, level 2, level 1. I was at the higher level. I was level 4. I was in the enhanced outpatient program. It was like a mental health, because I lost my mind for a while. You know, the severity of my situation, and then coming off the drugs, I had like kind of lost my mind. It took about 4 years for me to get right again. And so I was there at Mill Creek on the level 4 yard for about 6.5 years, and then I went to the level 3 yard for a couple years after that, and then that's where I killed fucking Kibby.
So you killed Kibby at Mule Creek?
Yes. I killed Kibby on the level 3 yard, the lower level.
Wasn't Charles Manson or Tex Watson from Charles Manson's group at Mule Creek? Was any of those guys there?
Yeah, Charles, Tex Watson, he goes by Charles. He doesn't like to go by
I know he goes by Charles Watson. Yeah,
it's Watson. Watson was there. He ran the religious services, but he was on a different yard than me. I wasn't on the same yard as him. Years ago, though, I went to prison on a parole violation, and I actually had gone to Mill Creek before on a parole violation, and I met Charles there. He tried to recruit me to go into his church services, and then I was working out with a buddy of mine. I didn't know who he was, but my buddy said, "Hey, you know who that is?" I'm all, "No." He goes, "That's Tex Watson." I'm all, "Who the fuck's that?" And he told me who it was, but I didn't really care. I don't spend my time. I'm like not fascinated. I'm not impressed or fascinated or wowed by these guys that got notoriety in the news from what they did. Yeah. I don't. That doesn't get me on. I don't look for that. But a lot of people do. Like with this situation with Kibby, I mean, a lot of people told me who he was, and you know, so at that point I took it into consideration. But his notoriety really didn't have a whole lot to play into it.
So you're at Mule Creek, you're in a, you explained that you want a single cell status. I want you to walk through you got 15 minutes now, Jason, tell the whole story. You want single cell status. You choose a victim. You hear about this guy. Walk us through the beginning to the end on how this all goes.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
You want to call me back and do that?
Cut me off.
Yeah, want to call me back and do that?
Yeah, you want me to just call you right back?
Call me back, bud.
Yeah, all right.
Thanks. All right, so as you've seen there, he doesn't want to talk about his first case. He
wants to paint his own picture, Phil. He
doesn't want to talk about that first case because it involves the feds, and it's kind of dangerous, right? So I pushed him as hard as I could on that, and he said no, and that's good. That's cool. I'm just looking at some of the questions in the chats. You guys, Ron's going to open up. You're going to get to ask questions of this guy.
I've got 4 questions here already.
What he's about to say right now, let's let him talk about killing Kibby.
Yeah, let's do that.
What he's about to say right now, guys, is going to be some of the most insane true crime content you've ever heard. The inside scoop, the guy that lives with Tex Watson and fucking Charles Manson, he's going to tell you how he groomed and killed the serial killer. Once we get through this, I'm going to open up for Q&A with him, okay? Yeah. So sit tight when he calls, but he don't want to talk about this, but he killed an informant, and he was so afraid for his life, he drove right to the police station.
You have a prepaid call from...
How do you kill a serial killer? You're about to find out. Only 4 guys that I know have done this. And I'm talking to all 4.
You have a prepaid call. You will not be charged for this call.
Please like and share, people. Remember to like, share, leave comments. That's how
That'd be great, guys. Please do that.
That's how the algorithm.
All right, Jason. Sorry about that. So I guess you got 15-minute calls, right?
Yeah.
How you doing?
All right, I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you all right?
Yeah, no, I'm good.
We got a good group of people watching and listening, and I told them that what you're about to say is they're never going to ever hear again on how you do what you did. So you're sitting in Mule Creek Prison. You want single cell status. Jason, this is your chance to walk through what happens between you deciding you want single cell status and getting single cell status. How does that work, Jason? Tell us the whole story about Kibby.
Okay. All right. First, let me kind of give a little bit of context here. The whole thing about having single cell in California prison really has to do primarily with safety, because there's a lot of dangerous people in prison, and a prison cell is real small. You got a lot of dudes who are on dope or involved in some kind of gang activity. I've seen a lot of people get killed in the cell being down in prison, and it's not a pretty thing to hear, and it's not a pretty thing to watch when they drag somebody's body out of the cell that's been murdered in the cell. Typically, people beat people to death in the cell, or they stab them to death, or they hack them up, shit like that. Like, this shit I'm telling you is real. And to see that happen kind of leaves it in your mind like, damn, being a small statured inmate, you're at a disadvantage in the cell, and they just don't give you your single cell based on your size or length of time or any of that. So you pretty much got to earn it by killing somebody. And it's in your better interest to do that, because you got a lot of psychopaths up in here, people that don't care, that will kill you to get theirs. And I'm not trying to make it sound worse than it is. I mean, it really is like that. And so I had come to the decision, you know what, I got to get my single cell, because for one, safety, and two, because I'm a spiritual person and I can do my rituals and my meditation and all that, and I need my own sacred space to do it. And so that's another reason why I got my single cell, was for my ritual practices. So I had been doing a lot of positive growth over the years, trying to become a better person, you know, within context to me. And I started going to school, to college, and learning and interacting with people. And I got into this program called Social.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
It involves a lot of active listening. The mantra is cause no harm, all that shit. And so it was a 2-year paraprofessional program that required an internship at the end, which I did and completed. Me and 2 of my colleagues, we co-created an adult literacy program. And all that was fine and dandy, but like to do what I did was kind of a step backwards, because I started learning how to have more empathy for people and put myself in the shoes of other people and how they would feel if something bad happens to them, etc. All that. I started having feelings of remorse and all that from my life crime that I want to try to make right, or to try to do right. I can never make anything right when you kill somebody, but just a lot of really complex, deep emotions going on inside me. And in a way, me choosing Kibby, the kind of person he was, in a real sense, was just kind of a way of me trying to compensate and act out. I mean, I can't try to tell that story of murdering a serial killer, a serial rapist murderer, like if I'm some kind of fucking hero. It really has a lot to do with some kind of deep psychology of me just wanting to compensate for my own wrongs. And in a way, it's kind of shallow, but it is what it is. I mean, I only feel what I can only feel, and I did that to try to redeem myself a little bit karmically, rather than just kill some other dude. I killed that fucking piece of shit. And I do feel good about it, but it was a good kill. I mean, I befriended that dude for 2 years.
2 years? Wait.
He seemed to,
2 years you befriended him?
Yeah, 2 whole years.
Wow.
I first met him when I very first got to the yard because of my job, because I was a porter. I used to pass out toilet paper and razors and soap. And I used to be the guy the cops would send to if they needed some kind of form or some kind of assistance, something they needed help with something, they would point them in my direction. I would help them out. So Kibby, he needed some things, and he just for some reason wanted to always reach out to me and talk to me. I had never read his book. He had a book called Trace Evidence by Bruce Henderson. I wish I'd have read that book before I killed him, because then I would have probably been able to get a lot of information out of him. He was really trying to disclose a lot about the things he did to me. Other inmates were trying to befriend him and get it out of him. He wasn't giving it to them. But for me, he kept trying to give it to me. Hindsight's 20/20. When I look back, all the things he would say and the conversations he would open up and try to have, and then I would practice my paraphrasing, reflecting feeling skills and stuff I was being taught in social work, human services. Like, he was just giving me all kinds of stuff about cases he'd never been caught for, and I wasn't really appreciating the situation at the time. I was just more focused on getting this guy who wanted to move me into a cell so I could fucking kill him.
So Jason, what you're saying is he was wanting to talk to you about unsolved murders, and you had told me before you kind of regret that a little bit. If you would have waited a little while, you probably could have solved some cold cases, right?
I could have definitely helped. I don't know about solve them, but I could have certainly helped potentially identify some unknown victims, because he was in the habit of calling these girls by their first name. Now, I don't know hardly anything about his situation, but he always used to refer to them by their names. And, I imagine I could have got, time frames and places and names. Who knows? I probably could have contributed to at least helping identify some of them. He used to do a lot of skydiving, and the theme, every time he would open up to me and talk to me about it, is that he would go skydiving in one area, pick up a girl, and then leave them in a different area. And that, I guess, was his thing. He would pick up chicks, and then he would do his thing, and then he'd leave them in different jurisdictions. I didn't know that until after reading his book, but that's what he always used to talk about. And I just kind of, wish I would have played that a little bit differently, but It's strange, a guy like him.
So Jason, tell us the story. How do you meet him, and what happens?
So the day I met him, I was waiting to go into school. I was taking intentional interviewing and counseling. And he was waiting for guards to pick him up and take him into across the fence to go talk to detectives. I didn't know it at the time, but that's what I later found out. And he came up to me and he started talking to me. And when an inmate told me who that was, and I was like, "Oh, is that right?" He's like, "Yeah, that dude's a fucking serial killer. He did this, he did that." I kept it in my mind that I was like, "Okay, this is going to be the guy I'm going to fucking do when it comes time to do it." And for 2 years after that, every time he wanted to talk, I would just talk to him and let him talk to me, and let him show me his pictures of him skydiving. And he used to do like origami. He used to make these paper chandeliers out of these cubes. He used to have some friend that used to be a detective. I later found out was this guy named Vito Bertaccini. He used to talk about him all the time, like, you know, it was his best friend, and I guess he used to send him these chandeliers. Well, the day I moved in with him, there was a Christmas card that he had that detective had sent to him, and he showed it to me, and he had it on his desk. And later on that night when I fucking killed him, his foot, when he was thrashing around, because he put up a fight, he definitely understood what was happening. While he was being strangled, he understood the significance of being strangled, and he did not want to die that way. And the fact I had like a sloppy chokehold on him because of my long sleeve sweater made it even longer. So it took twice as long as it normally would have took because of that sweater I was wearing, which gave it more time for him to be terrorized about what was happening. He did not want to die that way. But his foot kicked that card out off of the desk, and it landed on the middle of the floor. And I remember after I finished choking him out, I rolled him off me, and I grabbed his bootlace that I had on my shelf to tie him up with to get ready to do the next phase of what I did to him. And he had like urine ran down his pant leg onto the floor, and it was like pulling up, running over to that card. So I picked that card up and got it out the way so it wouldn't get dirty, and I put it back on the shelf. But I remember looking at it thinking, damn, it's almost like that detective was there. Like this whole time, these detectives are in 2019, 2020, we're trying to get him to come clean with whatever else he had. And he just continued playing his little game. That at the end, that detective was there with them, kind of presiding last rites over his execution.
Wow.
That's really what it was. It was like an execution. I fucking straight executed that dude.
So Jason, we know that he was afraid of being killed in prison. How in the hell do you groom him to get him to be your cellie? How the fuck does that happen?
So, I have a lot of social mobility in my environment. I talk to all the various different demographics. And I'm a problem solver. It's not that I'm this tough guy. I'm not a tough guy. It's just that I'm real personable and I have social IQ. And I know how to solve problems. And so if there are two people that aren't getting along, the cops are getting me, hey man, talk to these guys, see if you can figure out something, we could get them a better situation, better cellies, whatever. And I would do it every time. And so if somebody was picking on him, I could stop him without violence, you know. And he kind of like came to me as a source of security. If he needed coffee, I gave him coffee. If he needed snacks, I gave him snacks. If he needed protection, I would give him protection. And I picked up on that, so I had a couple people press up on him and put fear in him, like they were going to beat his ass, and then, so that way I could come in and be like the hero, and kind of this, like, you know, the standard expression tactic, right?
Yeah.
And that put it in his mind that I'm his source of safety. So by convincing him that I'm his source of safety, by using a couple thugs I knew to fucking push up on him and put the fear in him and then resolve it, that made him feel like, you know, I'm his guy. I'm the one that's going to keep him safe. And then being that I would let him talk whatever he wanted to talk about, however he wanted to talk about it, because he was real controlling in his conversations. He wants to dictate the theme, the direction, the length, the tone of whatever it is we're talking about. So I would just go with that. I would just be his sounding board and his source of protection. And rather than suggest I move in with them, I kind of made it so me moving in with him was his idea.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
That's fascinating.
In prison, if somebody's coming at you with an idea like, "Hey, let's do this or that," you automatically got to become suspicious.
Right.
You know,
right.
Because people always got these fucking motives. You gotta believe that the idea that's happening is coming from you yourself, not somebody else.
Right.
Basically, that's all it is mastering the art of indirection.
So you made it sound like it was his idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so you convince him he wants you to be your cellmate. How does that work in prison? Can he say, "I want Jason Boudreau as my cellmate"? How does that work?
That's exactly what happened. You have like these things. They're called cell move slips, literally, right? You fill out the slip. You put your name and your CDC number. The other inmate does the same. Then you approach the officer. You say, "Hey, we want to fucking cell up," and the cop will be like, "Okay, you guys haven't been in any trouble. Wait till next Saturday."
You have 60 seconds remaining.
No, keep going, Jason. Keep going.
And then when the bed move day arrives, they do your cell move. In a perfect world, that's how it goes.
Call me back and let's talk about when you got in his cell. Guys, just so you know, he's talking to nobody else in the United States, nobody in the world. I'm the only person he's talking to, and it takes a while to get this kind of person to talk to you. All right, you back, Jason?
Yeah, I'm back.
All right, so these next 15 minutes, your next call here, I want you to dig deep into how did you lure Kibby to be your cellmate? What happened in the cell? Talk about the crime, and then what happened afterwards.
Okay, so kind of review a bit. You know, I'm doing good. I'm going to school. I'm a rebuilding porter in my housing unit. You know, Kibby, I cultivated this social dynamic where Kibby relies on me as a source of safety and security. And the time comes because I'm getting closer to finishing my college program. And I knew that when my college program was over, I would be getting transferred and going to a different housing situation, and me wanting to have a little bit more control over my living situation, decided to, you know, get my single cell status. That way I don't have to go live in a dorm setting. I don't want to live in a dorm. I want to live in a cell. So I fucking killed Kibby, right? You know,
How do you lure a serial killer to your cell? How does that happen?
Let me explain this, just in case there's some gray area here. So just because a person is a serial killer doesn't mean that they're this dangerous mastermind type of individual. You know, Kibby, when you look at the victimology of Kibby, he preyed on young white females. You know, some of them were prostitutes, but still that doesn't negate the value of their human life. They were still young females. And Kibby is not any kind of a threat in a prison setting. Like in prison, you have thugs, gangsters, drug dealers, psychos. You know, you got people. This is a wilderness of dangerous people to live in prison. Kibby is not a convict. He was not a criminal, really. Kibby was a deviant, is what he was. He wasn't a criminal. He was more of a deviant. And so and that's the case with most people like Kibby. You know, most child molesters, most sex offenders, most serial killers are majority serial rapists that kill their victims to get away with it, right? And continue doing what they do. And they're not criminals per se. So when they come to a criminal environment, they stick out like a sore thumb. They go from being the predator to becoming the prey. You know, and in here, you know, Kibby was straight prey. He had zero convict IQ, what I call convict IQ. He had no convict IQ whatsoever. And it's real easy. Like, I mean, I've actually thought about writing about this. You know, the difference of the way people are in prison as opposed to how they are in society. Everything is totally predatory in prison. Every seemingly insignificant human encounter that you have is not happenstance. It's calculated 3 or 4 steps ahead. If you first meet somebody, that person you met has been watching you from a distance for probably 3 or 4 days, watching who you talk to, paying attention to how you pay attention, and taking you off guard on purpose so that when they do interact with you, your guard is down.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
They can take advantage of you when you're at your most vulnerable. And so it was real easy to do what I did with Kibby because he was so trusting. Like, he just, I mean, he wouldn't even fight to defend himself. If he were, I mean, granted, he was an old-ass man. I almost didn't kill him just because of the optics of him being an old senior citizen. Not that I have some high moral standard, but the optics of it, like, that's what kept him safe. A lot of people didn't want to kill him because they didn't want the stigma of murdering an old-ass man. But I think with him, it's an exception because of everything he did to all those young females. He deserved to get fucking killed. He needed to get killed. It was very important for their souls because I do believe that we have souls, that we continue beyond the death of our physical body. It was important for their souls that he be fucking killed that way. And that he be preyed on, that he be tricked out of his life like he tricked them out of their lives. And I do believe that some of his victims were with me that night when I fucking smoked them. And some of them are still with me. I made friends on the other side, so to speak, in the spirit world. I have lots of friends as a result of killing that dude. I went totally off.
So Jason, get to the business. You move. How the fuck you get in his cell? And really quickly tell us what happened in that cell when you got arrested for murder, a second murder.
So, you know, I played it off. I got him to go to the cops and tell the cops he wanted me as a cellie. Boom. I moved in. That day, I moved all my property in. I played a ruse that I didn't want to unpack all my stuff because I was too exhausted and I would do it later. And I told him, hey, a good movie's coming on tonight. A Burt Reynolds movie called Malone on Charged Television, on the Charged channel. I said, let's fucking drink some hot chocolate and watch that Burt Reynolds movie. We'll just watch it on your TV. He's like, oh, yeah, okay. Which was all set up on my part. I had brought some package catalogs. You know, inmates ordered these packages from these vendors like Walkinghurst, Access, Union Supply. I brought those in, set them on the table deliberately because I knew that he would be in between me and those catalogs, and that while we're sitting on his rack, I could ask him to hand me those catalogs, and that when he goes to reach for the catalogs, that would be my time to strike. So I set all that up just right. The only thing was when it was actually going to go down. When would I actually strike? And I had to wait for the cop to do their last walk because they walk every couple hours. So at 9:30 p.m., the cop walked after that. At 10 o'clock is when I made my move. But what ended up happening was, it was poetic. What actually happened was like fucking poetic for real. Kibby laughed at this female actress who was portraying a death maw on her face. She portrayed being a victim of suffocation by a plastic bag over her face. Burt Reynolds' lady friend in the movie. And he was laughing at her face the way it looked like that. And that laugh is what triggered me to kill him right then and there. But then when he died with that same gaping, open mouth death maw on his face that he laughed at that female actress that she portrayed. It was weird. Like, he laughed at her portraying that because he'd seen that in his victims, and somehow that gave him pleasure. Then he got fucking killed, and he died with that same look on his face that wouldn't go well. I mean, it's even in the report. The cops are like, this fucking dude's mouth, his eyes are wide open. They won't shut. It was gnarly.
Wow. So talk about the situation, Jason. You're watching a movie, a Burt Reynolds movie, drinking hot chocolate with the I-5 Strangler. What the hell happens?
So he makes that laugh. I hear a voice. Do it now, Jason. And I set my hot chocolate down, and that voice says again, ask him to hand you those catalogs. So I obey that voice. I say, hey, Raj, hand me those catalogs. So he leans over to grab the catalogs. I get up behind him. I'll put him in a chokehold. It's a sloppy choke because I'm wearing a long sleeve shirt. He starts scrambling. He grabs my glasses off my face. He breaks them. He tries to thumb my eye out. He keeps reaching for his pillow. I later found out he had a little weapon. He had a little razor blade glued inside some popsicle stick handles. I found it after I killed him, right? I knew to look there because he kept reaching there when we would talk all throughout the night. Every time we'd stop talking, he'd reach for his pillow. And because I was schooled by convicts, you know, how to do time in cell and how to pay attention, that caught my attention. I'm like, why the fuck does this dude keep reaching for his pillow? So I knew that when I put him in that chokehold to pull him away from that pillow, just in case he's got something there. Sure enough, he had a little tomahawk. And I'm glad that I pulled him away from that because he would have sliced me up while I was fucking killing him. And that's the last thing I wanted to be walking around with. Razor blade fucking scars on my face from that fucking dude, right? Or from anybody. But anyhow, I put him in that chokehold. I pull him away, and he starts kicking around. He starts trying to punch me in the face. He starts trying to gouge my eyeball out. And he finally starts to go limp. And as he goes limp, I could feel it that he's dying. He's going out. And I just told him, I just whispered, Will, sinister, you know.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
I didn't genuinely mean for him to rest in peace. I just wanted him to hear that.
No, we
finality of the day.
Jason, we missed what you said to him. What did you whisper to him when he was dying?
I told him rest in peace, right? I didn't mean it like to sincerely rest in peace. The way I whispered it to him was real sinister, and his arms started shaking all crazy, like, you know, he started convulsing, and then he lost his bowels, what he had, you know, in his bowels he lost, and it ran down his pant leg, and he died right there in my arms. And I just held on to him for like another 10 minutes, and I was like a workout. I fucking broke a sweat. And then I let go of him, and as I let him go, his last breath came out of him. And then I reached and I grabbed that bootlace I had, stashed on my locker, tied him up. I put him on his bed. I picked that Christmas card up from that detective, got that out of the way, and then I got everything ready to do a ritual with his body to break the psychic bond he held over the souls of his victims, because for the 2 years I knew him, he always used to talk about how, you know, that they're still with him, that they belong to him. Like, it's infuriating to even really talk about. This guy actually believed that he had the souls of his victims. And
Jason, let's back up for a minute. I want you to explain this. You said you did some things to him that he did to his victims. What did you do to him with bindings and cuttings? And just explain that to the people. What did he do, and what did you do to him?
So Kibby had this weird fetish. He used to like to cut his victims' clothes in odd patterns. He used to like to spend time with the bodies of his victims. He used to like to tie his victims' wrists up and strangle them with their own clothing and all kinds of stuff like that. And he had given me a sweater when we first met. So that was the sweater that I wore when I choked him out. That's as close as I could get to strangling him with his own clothing because of logistical reasons. So I wore the sweater he gave me when I choked him out. He used to cut his victims' clothing up, so I cut his clothing up. You know, I cut his sweater and his shirt and everything open so I could carve a pentagram in his chest for part of the ritual that I did to break the psychic bond he held over the souls of his victims. I bound his wrist with the bootlace because he used to bind the wrists of his victims. But my whole purpose for doing all that is based in this concept called mere punishment. So I study, the occult, and I study esoteric topics, and there's an ancient Norse tradition where criminals who would do crimes like Kibby did would be strangled to death on purpose for the specific reason of releasing the bonds or fetters that their force of consciousness would hold over their victims. And they would inflict mere punishment. So they would do little things that the offender himself would do to the victims. You do it to the offender as a form of what's called mere punishment.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
So Jason, in this last minute, in this last, Jason, so after you killed him, you carved a pentagram in his chest. You talk about how you kind of like stayed in the cell for a while. Like, what did you do after he was dead? And then call me back after. Call me back after you get cut off.
Damn.
Okay. All that is based on what's called a scripted thinking and symbolic behavior. And what I did, I spent time with them because when a person dies, they don't automatically just go away. They're still there. And he was still there. So I spent time with them to mirror the fact that he would spend time with his victims. I don't even know if you're still there.
I'm here. We're good. We're here. But I'm going to let Jason tell you to finish this story. And then we're going to, Ron, are you ready for some Q&A? Okay?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Inmate at the Pleasant Valley State Prison, Coalinga, California.
Let you hear this bullshit.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded. You have a prepaid call. You will not be charged for this call. To accept this call.
So, by the way, he's paying for these calls himself. I'm not paying for these calls.
Thank you for using Global Tel-Link.
All right, listen, Jason, we want to finish up your story as fast as you can, and we want to open up for some Q&A, and then we want to talk about your writing. So quickly finish up the story. Like Kibby, you strangled him out. You carved a pentagram in his chest. What else did you do?
Okay, so with all that, right, nothing happens in a vacuum. All throughout the waxing phase of the moon, where the moon goes to full, I prepared for that. I did charging rituals with the razor blades I used to carve the pentagram. The whole purpose of the pentagram has nothing to do with Satan or anything like that also. It has to do with using geometry to open a trans-dimensional gateway for consciousness, to gain entry into a whole other dimension, a dimension where spirits exist. That's the purpose why I carved the pentagram. I carved it on his chest because of his heart chakra. I got on top of him. I put my left hand over the pentagram, my right hand in the air. I sang runes, certain runes from the Elder Futhark as I done so, all as part of the scripted thinking and symbolic behavior to achieve the desired result that I aim to achieve. I modified the Lord's Prayer, Our Father who art in heaven, to mirror a more ancient type of esoteric reading. Instead of Our Father, I said All Father to refer to Odin, the High One, etc. There's a lot that was involved with that specific type of ritual that I did. It was very meaningful, very important, not just for me, but also, I believe, for the souls of his victims.
So you felt like you freed
more than just the ones.
I like that you explained this. You thought you freed the souls of his victims, and you did get some of the victims' families to message you or tell you that they appreciated that. But Jason, you carved a pentagram in his chest, and you have 666 above your eye. Some people would say you're into Satanism. Are you into Satanism?
No, not in the way that people are going to automatically assume. That's such a misunderstood topic or discussion, right? I mean, I'm into the occult. I'm into runes. People change. People grow over the years. Mm-hmm. Just because a person has 666 or anything like that, that doesn't automatically mean they're into Satan or that has something to do with Satan or anything like that. If I could, I would get the tattoo removed. I even signed up to get it removed, but you know, I don't have a release date, so I'm not a priority. They're not going to put me on it to get removed. But you know,
when I see Jason, let me just tell you something. When I see your tattoo, your 666 above your eye, to me, that tells me that some people won't fuck with you because of that. Is that true or not? They're like, we're not fucking with that guy.
I mean, no, not really. I mean, I talk to all kinds of people.
Yeah.
All kinds of people talk to me. I mean, dude, this tattoo I have on my face is nothing. You should see some of the shit that people got on their face in prison. Like, it
really?
blows their mind. I mean, you got people that got their whole fucking faces tattooed.
Yeah. So, Ron, we're going to take some questions. So Jason, I'm going to take a few questions that people have a lot of questions for you. And then I want you to talk about your writings. I think that's important. And Ron, let's go ahead and throw Jason some Q&A. What are some of the questions? We have a lot of people on here, Jason, for you. So
okay, well, you kind of covered the rituals question that Iggy was asking.
Yeah.
Okay,
wait, Jason, can you hear him?
Here's a bit of a deep one.
Okay, go ahead.
Here's a bit of a deep one from Joe Spring. The question is, what does love feel like to Jason?
So somebody asked, what does love feel like to you, Jason? What is love?
I can only imagine it, but what I would feel love would be is some kind of unconditional joy. Just like a joyous feeling where a person is accepting of you in your spirit 100% completely, and the feeling is reciprocal. It has to be both ways, not just one way.
Okay.
Yeah, I get that. That's good. What else?
So next question from Bunny. If his roommate would have been respectful of his religious beliefs or a fellow practitioner, would you have resorted to killing to get your own room?
So Jason, this is an interesting question. Like I didn't expect this. So like if Kibby would have been like okay with your rituals and all that shit, would you have still like were you intent to kill him no matter what he was like, or could you have like been his cellmate for good? What was your intent?
Well, no, I took action against Kibby based on what he did to all those young females. I think anybody who does stuff like that to young females should be killed.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter what he was like to you, Jason, you were going to kill him no matter what.
Yes.
Okay.
From GG Mac, did you gain any notoriety or any status from killing the I-5
Did you gain
Strangler?
any notoriety or status in prison?
I gained respect. I guess respect is really the most important thing because notoriety is not always cracked up to be. If you have a lot of notoriety, that just puts a target on your back. It makes people want to get you to have notoriety themselves.
Ironic.
I got respect. A lot of people respected that. I did that to him for the reason that I did it, and they're more willing to accept me as a person and look past my flaws as a result of what I did.
So Ron, Jason has explained to me, and it's very interesting.
Okay.
To be in prison and to be famous, like Berkowitz, Manson, these guys, is very dangerous.
Of course. A
lot of people, when you're famous or you're on a TV show or whatever, they want to make a mark for themselves and they want to take you out. Right, Jason? That's what you're dealing with. Like if you get too famous, people are going to want to take you out, correct?
Correct.
This call
and I never even thought about that, as we do this. Any other questions for him, Ron?
We've got one from a man named Ronald.
Ronald
a different question. What did it feel like for Jason when the I-5 Strangler took his last breath? What
did it feel like for Jason when the I-5 Strangler took his last breath?
Okay, I can answer that. The feeling, there's a word called clairsentient. It's hard to explain, but it felt very good. Like I could feel in his body his terror. I felt in his body, the way his body tensed up, and almost like it was telepathic. I could hear his mind scream, no. He met fear. He met death before he actually died. He had his most terrifying moment, and what he caused his victims to feel, he himself experienced it. That's what I felt.
And you said that, you told me that it took so long to kill him, Jason, that you know that he knew he was being strangled by someone else. Like he knew he was being killed, correct?
Correct. He understood that what was happening was premeditated murder. He knew that the whole thing was a trick. The minute I locked my arms around his neck and he started to fight back, he knew that that was his time, that he was going to die. It's a feeling that's unspoken, but you know, like if anybody's ever been in a fight with somebody in real life, for whatever reason, that feeling is almost telepathic, where you understand the person you're engaging, you can hear their thoughts.
Wow.
You know what they're thinking.
Wow.
You know what they're experiencing. That's what it's like.
Wow.
Question.
Any other questions,
Yeah,
Ron?
I want to ask a few questions myself.
So Ron is my guy from the UK. He's from Scotland. He's got a question for you, Jason, directly.
Okay.
I'm going to put you down by the... Go ahead.
Yeah, no.
Hold on a second. Go ahead, Ron.
Was there ever any occasions when you were outside prison where you were practicing your religious beliefs and witnessed any other form of ceremonial abuse or offerings, shall we say?
So he wants to know, did you experience anything outside of prison with your beliefs or ceremonial stuff?
No, let me address that. So, at the time I was out, I had first started getting into the occult. I was studying material from the Church of Luciferian Light out of Florida, as a matter of fact. They're a very responsible occult type of organization. They do not condone harming animals or women or anything like that. And I have a lot of respect for their material, for their organization, and organizations like them. So nobody that I ever did any practicing with ever did anything that would harm women or harm animals or anything like that. Most of it, when you practice anything in the left-hand path, it's some kind of consensual sex magic. People get together during the waxing phase of the moon. They get high, they have sex, and they do it in front of an altar. But it's all responsible with consenting adults. It's nothing ever that involves harming children or animals or anything like that.
Okay, so it sounds like then you've made yourself an outcast to your former fellow followers. Was there ever any moments where you weren't with your fellow practitioners, where you overstepped those boundaries as you did on the day you killed Kibby?
Can you hear him, Jason? Can you hear him?
Not really. What did you say?
Okay, Jason, go ahead, Ron. Ask him directly. Go ahead.
You know, you've just taken us through the history of your your belief system and those that you practiced your beliefs with. You must consider yourself an outcast now from that, being that you've crossed the line. I wasn't really being direct enough with my questioning. Did you ever partake in any similar rituals prior to going to prison this time or prior?
No, I've never done anything inappropriate in a ritual context. I don't view murdering Kibby as inappropriate. I think that's completely appropriate. To kill somebody like him is 100% appropriate. But I mean, yeah, of course, there's going to be people who disagree with me about that, and that's fine. People are entitled to disagree with me. I don't represent anybody. I don't speak for anybody. You know, I only speak for myself.
And I mean, you're saying people like you were saying people like Kibby deserve to die. Do you feel like there's anything that would put you in the same category as that? Do you think there's people out there that would believe that you deserve to die? And what are your thoughts on that?
That's a deep question. What if someone says you are the next Kibby? Jason, what do you think of that?
I mean, that doesn't really bother me. I mean, if somebody wants to try to knock me down, they're going to try to knock me down. I'm not Kibby, though. I have prison IQ. You know, I don't knock down easily. You know, but I haven't done anything so egregious in my life to carry that kind of guilt or fear, where I'm worried about somebody wanting to put that label on me, like if I got to go down. I haven't done anything that bad to where I'm worried about it. But, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that happens to people in the world. People, you got good people who haven't done anything wrong and they get knocked down. I mean, it's a dangerous world we live in. Sometimes people who are deserving of getting knocked down live decent lives and never get knocked down. And sometimes people who don't deserve it end up having bad things happen to them. It's chaotic, you know. There's really no way to. It's not a perfect world.
So Jason, if you were going to be killed today, would you be like, I'm ready to die? Like, are you accepting of being killed in prison? Like, is that a possibility?
Yeah, of course. I would die strong. I live by the code of I-5.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
Go ahead.
Either I'm going to die in combat, or I'm going to die by my own hand, self-offering at a pre-designated time. I don't fear death. I don't fear dying. And when death comes to us all, you know, all we have to do is die strong. I mean, that's all you can do. You can't control if you're going to make it through that situation or not. All you can do is control whether or not you die strong or die weak. I'm going to die strong.
Hey, Jason, call us back and just talk to us for about 5 or 10 minutes about your writings, and then we'll be done.
Okay.
Thanks, bro. All right, Ron, we answer all our questions?
To be honest with you, man, this guy's got a history. To be honest, it's only out of respect for you, right? Because I'm, producing this with you. It's only out of respect for you that I've held back on saying things, because I don't want to say or overstep a mark that messes up a contact for you. But there's some things that have to be said about this guy. And to be honest with you, I don't think putting it in a video that people in the prison might be able to watch through is a good idea. And again, that's for respect to you, okay? Because I don't want there to be a situation where other people that would talk to you wouldn't talk to you because of how mental your producer can be sometimes. So
Jason, let's give you some time. Let's give you 6 minutes to share what you're writing about. Like, so you now have your single cell status. You're now in your own cell. You're in the California prison system. And I explained to these people that you live like a monk, like you're a writer. Just talk about your life in the next 6 minutes and what you're writing about and what you're looking to do. Tell us your story.
Okay, so I first learned of this conceptual frame of being a monk in a monastery from reading this pamphlet called True Brothers by Edward Thorson, published by Runa Raven Press. It's a guide to the practice of asatru in prison. My spiritual craft or practice can be explained like this. I have a combined trust or religious loyalty of San La Muerte and Rokatru. Rokatru is like the dark side of asatru, and San La Muerte is the male version of La Santa Muerte, which is like the saint of death. In other words, I worship death as a saint, but also I integrate European paganism as well. And I do that to embrace my racial mixture of being Mexican and European derived. I'm a mix. So in my spiritual belief, our racial heritage, we have spiritual ties to our racial ancestors through our blood. So being that I'm a mixed race, I embrace, Nahua, Mexica, Aztec type of spiritual craft, as well as European paganism. And I go with the dark side of that. So, for example, my pantheon of gods is, of course, Odin, the High One, Loki, and Queen Hela with the Thyrsus demons, and the Landviter, the Trojan spirits, just discarnate human spirits and demons, etc. So I view writing as a type of magical craft. And when I think of myself as a scribe in a monastery, prison, a correctional facility being a monastery, I read over all these different scrolls and books about these different types of ideas, these different types of crafts. I view thought forms as living entities, like spells. And that's really what they are. When you think about it, when you tell a story, what you're doing is you're transmitting thought forms that impact another person who hears it internally, and it shapes their internal subjective experience. So therefore, reading and writing is a magical craft, and fictional writing itself is like a whole arena of spellcraft. And there are some in the left-hand path who view it that way. And so I do specific types of psychic medium channeling through what's called infernal geometry. The Temple of Set put out this book called Infernal Geometry in the Left-Hand Path, The Magical System of the Nine Angles. It's an excellent book. In my opinion, that book represents the cutting edge for psychic medium channeling. I know there could be a lot who would disagree with me on that, but if people see it the way I'm looking at it, it makes a lot of sense. Anyhow, when human consciousness uses the delivery system of fictional storylines to access transdimensional entity consciousness, then what they have is a magical technology. So I'm writing 2 fictional manuscripts. One of them is like a science fiction, occult type of manuscript, and that's what I'm working on right now. And I've got a that I'm writing.
This call, your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
I need to say something.
I'm writing a thesis to establish credibility to the idea of transference of consciousness. What my fictional novel is about weaponizing transference of consciousness. So you got these different intelligence agencies operating on a black budget in the private sector, trying to use occult technology or methods to build an astral body that can go from physical body to physical body, hijacking physical bodies. And that's basically the essence of what my fictional manuscript is. I can go into a lot more detail, but I don't want to because I don't want somebody to rip it off. I'm concerned about trademarking, copyrights, all that. So my strategy going forward is to write an academic thesis, modern literary arts format with in-text citation as a way to stimulate dialogue and narrative about the subject of weaponizing transference of consciousness. I want to get it put on a website so people could do it like a peer review.
So Jason, Jason, your last minute with us. You're writing. You got some manuscripts out. You're writing some manuscripts. Just tell us real quick in the last minute, what is life like for you now in prison? You're in for life. You're going to die in prison. What is life like for you? Give us a 1-minute synopsis of your life in prison.
Life for me is I live inspired, Phil. I mean, I wake up, I meditate, I work out, I read, I write. I mean, I live inspired. That's the best way I can explain it. There's people in society who go through the humdrum of the day with no inspiration. I'm in prison and I'm 100% inspired. I look forward to getting my fictional manuscript out there and people to enjoy it and it becoming a movie one day. I'd like to screenwrite it or work with screenwriters into making it a movie that people can live and enjoy, that would open up their minds so that they could become inspired too. If I want to do anything, I want to share my inspiration with others and make it so that they can become inspired as well, like I am.
Awesome. Jason, thanks for hanging out with us tonight. I appreciate your time, and We'll talk again. We'll talk soon.
All right. I send my thanks to the audience, whoever did listen. I hope I wasn't too offensive or scrambled all over the place. It's weird trying to talk like this to a bunch of people. It doesn't go like you think it would.
No, you did great. You did great. Thank you for calling, brother. We appreciate it. You did good.
All right, you guys take care and have a good one, Ron. Thank you for asking those questions.
No problem.
Thanks, Ron. Jason Boudreau talked to Ron. How you like that, Ron?
Do you know what's really?
Okay,
do you know? Listen, Phil. Do you know what's really scary? A lot of his gods are the same, are my gods. A lot of the rituals he's talking about and the practitioners he's talking about are the things that I do. Yeah. And it's fascinating.
So the end of the story is going to be. The end of the story is my co-host is going to be a serial killer.
No, it's not. It's when we look at this from a data point of view, trauma breeds trauma. John Wedger preaches this, and you preach this. Most people who go on to do terrible things have had terrible things done to them. And if you were to look at us as data packs, primarily the biggest difference is the lack of trauma at the start of my life. Do you see what I mean? So it's fascinating when the interpretation of gods that had no written language get interpreted differently by people. It's fascinating. Anyway, this is not what the show's about. We're talking about, we're just wrapping it up.
Ron, so I want to say he's very well read. He's kind of smart. He's kind of decently aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
We hear about these inmates killed in prison, and we're like, oh, another inmate was killed in prison.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, they don't make the media. They're not. You never hear about them, but a lot of times they're killed just because these inmates want single cell status. Which
that's mad.
That's a whole other show on itself. We're like, wow. And he targeted a serial killer and killed him just like he killed other people. I think that's fascinating.
It is.